Manpower. Manpower was another large reason the Allies won World War II. The Allies' main powers were Great Britain, the USA, Canada, and the Soviet Union. The bulk of the Axis powers was made up of Germany, Italy, and Japan. The Allies had a total of 54.5 million troops, with the bulk coming from the Soviet Union, with 34.5 million. The Axis powers had a total of 19.3 million troops, with the bulk coming from 13.6 million Germans. The Axis were no match for the Allies in full power, who had nearly 3 times the amount of troops. Of course, men weren't the only important part of the Allied forces. Millions of women served and worked in men's place during World War II. Women kept the Allied economy strong during the war. The Axis powers were no match for the manpower of the Allied forces. Code breaking. The Enigma code was the German code used for military communications. The Allies knew that breaking the code and listening in on the enemy's communications would be a detrimental piece in the victory of World War II. Great Britain would lead the charge in code breaking in World War II. The most famous of code breakers was Alan Turing. Turing worked at Bletchley Park, the headquarters of British code breaking. He began his work at Bletchley in 1939. Polish codebreakers had previously solved the German deciphering machine and shared their information with the British after Germany attacked Poland. However, the Germans increased security on the machine, making it much more difficult to crack the code. Turing invented the Bomba machine with Gordon Welchman. The machine helped reduce the amount of work performed by codebreakers. By mid-1940, some German codes were being read at Bletchley. These codes really started to pay off in 1941 when they received German messages including details on a possible German invasion of Greece and Italian naval plans for the Battle of Cape Matapan. Bletchley also deciphered messages from Rommel's Panzer Army stationed in North Africa. In late 1941, a German trawler named Krebs was captured off the coast of Norway with complete Enigma machines and code books. The machines and books were immediately transported to Bletchley. From there, Turing and his team, Hut 8, broke German naval codes and directed naval convoys away from U-boat wolf packs. In July of 1942, Turing developed the code-breaking technique Turingery, which fed into work by others at Bletchley in fully understanding the Lorraine that enciphered German strategic messages of high importance. The German Navy, knowing their codes were being broken, added a fourth wheel to the Enigma machine, multiplying the possible settings by 26. Britain broke the new code in December of 1942 and continued reading German military codes. Turing traveled to the U.S. in 1943 to help American codebreakers with the Enigma cipher. Codebreaking played a huge role in military strategy and the victory of the Allies in World War II. The Allied air forces saw massive expansion due to having to compete with the German Luftwaffe. The RAF massively expanded from having 400 aircraft and 42 squadrons in 1934 to having 3,700 aircraft and 157 squadrons in 1939. They combined their radar with communication centers to direct defenses. 167,000 men enrolled in the RAF, integrating all Commonwealth countries. The RAF has 3 major command centers: Fighter Command, Bomber Command, and Coastal Command. The USSR's Air Force also saw a sharp rise in Air Force production in World War II. They produced a whopping 40,000 aircraft by 1944. Their Air Force included 157,000 planes in total, 126,000 of which were combat planes. The USA's Air Force in 1939 included 20,000 men and 2,400 planes. By 1944, the Air Force grew to 2.4 million men and 80,000 aircraft. In 1943, 783 Air Force bases were in use in the U.S. Navy and Air Force powers had big impacts on the war plan and strength of the Allies, and majorly helped them win in World War II.
Classified under 2 headings in World War II: mapping and damage assessment. Enemy activities were recorded and new military installations were located so accurate maps could be used by ground forces. Damage assessment photographs were used to gain intel on previous attacked targets to be re-attacked and the effectiveness of the enemy's rebuilding program. Does bombing? was said to be completely ineffective if not accompanied by reconnaissance aircraft. At first, Britain used hastily modified Spitfires for reconnaissance. By 1941, the U.S. got involved in reconnaissance technology. In November of 42, President Roosevelt's son, alongside the RAF, led the American reconnaissance assets in the Northwest African Photographic Reconnaissance Wing. By D-Day, the U.S. had 2 Air Force units strictly dedicated to reconnaissance. Colonel Roosevelt's 325th Reconnaissance Wing commanded the 25th Bombardment Group at RAF Watton and the 7th PRG at RAF Mount Farm. 7 squadrons of the 325th Reconnaissance Wing provided weather and pathfinder services detrimental to D-Day and the invasion of Normandy. The planes used 40-inch cameras recording 150 feet of fast film that was streamlined in a photo lab. When the invasion got closer to Germany, the planes mapped out bomb damage and the enemy held bridges detrimental to the Army's success. The Rhineland was an especially important area for the aircrafts to map out. Reconnaissance was a huge factor in the Allied victory in World War II. In the beginning of World War II, the Royal Navy was still the strongest in the world. They had 15 battleships, 15 battle cruisers, 7 aircraft carriers, 66 cruisers, 164 destroyers, and 66 submarines. By the end of the war, the U.S. had taken the throne of the world's largest navy. The Allied powers' naval production altogether included 47 carriers, 45 battleships, 136 cruisers, 171 destroyers, 1,445 escorts, 714 submarines, and 55,993,230 merchant tons of supply shipped. The Axis powers' naval production altogether included only 21 carriers, 9 battleships, 70 cruisers, 232 destroyers, 211 escorts, 1,381 submarines, and 4,200,099,267 tons of supplies shipped. The Allies' production severely outnumbered the Axis powers in all categories except for submarines. Most of the Allied naval power was shown off in the Pacific theater of World War II, where the U.S. Navy executed their island hopping campaign.